Hey guys, it's Keisha, and welcome back to Fetch Columbus on Hola TV, brought to you by Rascal Animal Hospital. Today, we're going to talk about 4 really important animal welfare bills that could really use your support. Here to tell us all about it, CEO of the Animal Cruelty Task Force of Ohio, Steffen Baldwin, also a humane agent in Union County. So Steffen, diving right in here, we have Goddard's Law. A lot of people don't know that animal cruelty is currently only a misdemeanor in Ohio. So would you tell us a little bit about what Goddard's Law could potentially do for the animals in Ohio?
Correct, Keisha. As you mentioned, animal cruelty is only misdemeanor in Ohio. What Goddard's Law would do, and Goddard's Law is also known as House Bill 274, it would escalate animal cruelty charges to a 5th-degree felony, which would allow people to go to prison for up to 1 year. As of right now, it's maxed out at only 90 days, and it generally is only probation. So this would allow it to go to up to 1 year of 5th-degree felony if serious physical harm can be proven during the act of cruelty. And that's the standard that has to be met, is serious physical harm. Whereas right now, the only way that it can ever be a felony is if an animal dies in a boarding facility. That's the only instance in Ohio where it can be a felony currently, and that has never happened yet. So this would be a game changer for Ohio.
Definitely, I totally agree, and it's so important, to be able to point out animal cruelty and abuse because it can lead to other things. Interesting statistic we have is between 1997 and 2001, there were 7 school shootings reported, and out of those 7 school shootings, all involved boys who had previously committed acts of cruelty and torture to animals.
That's correct, yes.
And so, knowing that animal abusers are 5 times more likely than a non-abuser to harm humans, there's also another bill going around that could potentially help stop that in its tracks too. Tell us about that.
Correct. So what we're looking at now is House Bill 243. What House Bill 243 would do is it would require mandatory psychological evaluations for any juvenile offender. And we know just the statistics you mentioned, and also if you think about any serial killer that we can think of in history, the Dahmers of the world, they all started out by abusing animals. So we know that if you can start at abusing an animal at a juvenile, that there is a strong link to some sort of mental illness. And if we can get some psychological evaluations, make that mandatory, hopefully we can help these juveniles before they become adults so they can commit much more serious crimes, not just against animals, but people as well.
And mentioning people, there's also some really great statistics on that as well. So another one that we have here, 68% of battered women reported violence toward their animals as well. Obviously proving that link between animal cruelty and then cruelty later towards humans as well. And also nearly half of those victims had stated that they stayed in those violent households because they were afraid for their animals.
Correct.
Which is another thing that unfortunately they use to control their victims. So also another law that brings us into the next one that could potentially protect the animals as well. So elaborate a little bit on that.
Right, so what we're looking at there is Senate Bill 177. And right across the street here is the State House, and I was actually there just about 2 hours ago providing testimony and support for this Senate bill. And it would require companion animals to be included in a pet protection order. So basically when there's a domestic violence situation, the judge would be able to include an animal in the pet protection order and remove the animal from the situation. Those statistics that you mentioned about people staying in that situation, it doesn't matter if it's domestic violence or if it's a natural disaster. We saw it during Hurricane Katrina. People would stay in their homes to protect their animals. We love our animals that much. They're that much members of the family to us that we would rather stay in that situation to keep them safe from whatever harm may be facing them. And in this situation, we're talking about domestic violence. Also, many times in these sorts of situations, the animal will be used as a pawn. It's a power tool. It's a way to gain control of a situation, to keep somebody in a situation that would normally want to leave. So this, again, what it does is it removes the animal from the situation, puts it into a safe place, a safe environment, and allows the person that's being abused, we always think women, but it could be a man also. Statistically, it's more women, but anyone can be abused. It allows them the freedom to leave that situation, get the help they need, and stop the abuse cycle right there.
Absolutely, and have their pets protected as well. Now, all these laws, they sound really great, but it doesn't really do us any good if there's no one that is trained properly on how to enforce them. So our final bill that we're going to discuss today hits on that. So tell us about it.
Yes, well, this is actually one of my favorite bills. This is House Bill 57, and we talked about nitro law a little while ago. The Nitro Army was very successful in passing a law a few years ago that did help with animal cruelty charges. This is their sister bill. So what House Bill 57 would do here is it's known as the Humane Agent Training Bill. And it would do a few things. First of all, it would do some things that you would think would be no-brainers. It requires or will require someone to show completion of training before they become appointed. And that's kind of, you would think it'd be a no-brainer, but there's a reason why these things were thrown in. And about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a case, a clear case of animal cruelty, a horrible case of animal cruelty, but the humane agent was not appointed properly. They had not submitted the paperwork to show they had gone through the training because they hadn't gone through the right training.
Yeah, we heard about that.
Right, exactly. And so the entire case got thrown out. The animals that were abused went back to the offender. The abuser got a clear record, and the humane agent lost her position, and there was a huge media blowout. So this would avoid that.
And no one wins in those situations.
Exactly.
So, and most importantly, you know, the animals suffer as well.
Exactly.
So.
I mean, the only winner there was the abuser himself. So that's one of the key components that I would do, is it would require completion of training. But the second thing it would do is it would open up humane agents to allow them to operate across borders. And right now there's something known as residency requirements. A residency requirement states that you cannot operate outside of the county that you live in. Mm-hmm. So in rural Ohio, we have a big problem with a lack of humane agents. As a matter of fact, in our research, as our nonprofit has done in the Animal Cruelty Task Force of Ohio, we found that over 60% of rural Ohio, which comes out to hundreds of thousands of animals across the state, have no humane agent presence in their county. 60%, that's over half of the state. But we have a lot of humane agents like myself. I'm not the only one. We have a lot of other humane agents that are in one county. They're working part-time, and they could effectively work in another county right next to them, 30 minutes away, where there isn't an agent. They can enforce those laws. But right now the residency requirements restrict that. So we have agents across the state that are willing to go across county lines and help their neighboring counties, and they aren't allowed to. So House Bill 57 would remove those residency requirements. It would let agents like myself and the other ones that are out there across the state go ahead and help out in those neighboring counties and actually provide some more enforcement so that all those other changes that we saw and we spoke about can actually be enforced in those counties.
I agree, and there's certainly a need for that. I mean, we see every day the unfortunate amount of cruelty cases that occur. I can't tell you how many I see on my newsfeed on Facebook. It is just heartbreaking. And now it's my understanding that these bills die at the end of the year. So it's so important to get the support now more than ever before the bills die. And unfortunately, then it's a whole nother process and can take years to complete. So tell us, where do we visit to support these bills, and who should we contact?
Yes, and you are so correct on the timeliness of this. We have a few weeks right now to get the point across to our elected representatives that these are changes that we want to see not happen. We want to see them happen. We want our community to see these changes. We want the animals to see these changes, and we have to be their voice. The animals can't call the legislators themselves.
Right.
We have to do that. So the way to do it here, there's a website I want you to take a look at here, and it's just http://www.legislature.state.oh.us. I'll go ahead and put that up on the screen for us there. And that right there will tell you, based on where you live, what county you live in, who your elected representative is, what their email address is, what their regular mailing address is, and what their phone number is. And they do want to hear from you. You know, we elect these people to represent us. And if we as a society value these laws and we want to see these changes being made, we have to be that voice. Again, you know, the animals are the one group that can't stand up and make those phone calls for themselves. So we have to go ahead and do that if it's important enough for us.
I certainly agree with you there. It's so important to call, email, write letters, you know, and you can call daily. There's no limit to how many calls that you can put in. Anything that you guys can do is appreciated. We'll put the website up there for you one more time. It's http://www.legislature.state.oh.us. Thanks again, Steffen, for taking the time to tell us about that. Now, moving on, in the winter months, it's getting cold out there, and Steffen has some tips for keeping our pets safe and warm, and how to report it if you see an animal that could be neglected.
Yes, we do, Keisha. You know, it's going to get a lot colder very, very soon. The law does not say that everybody has to keep their pet inside. You're allowed to keep your pet outside. I personally wish that every pet was inside, but the reality is different. They're not all going to be curled up on a fireplace. So if you're out and about and you see pets that are outside, the most important thing is to make sure that they have appropriate shelter. The law doesn't say just shelter. It says shelter that has to protect the animal from the elements. And not all shelter will do that. So it has to be a shelter where there's no holes, where wind can't come in and out, moisture can't come in and out, and one of the best things to do is to lay down straw inside the doghouse. And it's very important to do it the right way. Straw, not hay. Hay will absorb the moisture, it'll become moldy, and it won't provide protection. Straw does not absorb moisture. So
good to know.
It is very good to know. A lot of people think, oh, I'll put a blanket out there. The blanket's nice, it'll keep the dog warm. As soon as that blanket gets wet, it's going to freeze up and become hard. So don't put blankets out there, don't put hay out there. Put straw in those dog houses if they're going to be out there, or if you see someone that has that, a neighbor of yours, go ahead and knock on the door, give them a friendly suggestion to go ahead and put some straw in there and make the dog's life a little more comfortable. The second thing is they have to have access to water. People think, well, it's snowing out there, they can go ahead and eat the water. It takes a lot of calories to turn that snow and convert that snow into water. The extra calories, that can sap all the energy that a dog needs just to stay warm. But a water bowl can freeze within an hour or so out there.
That's very true.
So if you're going to have your pet outside, or if you know people that do have their pets outside, make sure that they're out there filling those water bowls on a regular basis. Every couple of hours, those water bowls should be refilled if they're going to be outside. Of course, again, our preference is that they come inside, but the law does not allow us to enforce our preference. We're humane agents. We have to enforce the law. So if that's what you see out there, I would at least make sure that those bare minimum standards go into effect, and they at least have some straw, not hay, not blankets, and they have a fresh source of water at all times.
Sure. Now, with temperatures, predicted this winter to drop, almost 20 below zero, what do you think is a safe amount of time if you are going to have your pet outside to make sure that they're safe and obviously doing well?
Well, every breed is different. If you have a Siberian Husky or an Arctic breed, the suggestions will be a little bit differently. But, base it on your own dog, their size, their age, what they can manage. If you see a dog lifting its paws up and doing that dance, that means that their paws are uncomfortable, they're hurting, they're suffering. Go ahead and bring them inside. Pay attention to the dogs. We call them companion animals. Let's make sure that they're actually our companions. Pay attention to them when they're out there. Let them go to the bathroom, get their exercise. If you're going to exercise, go out there with them. If you're cold, maybe your dog's probably cold at that point too. Yes. So why don't you guys both go inside?
I totally agree with you there. Well, thanks, Steffen, for giving us some tips on keeping our pets warm and safe, and also how to report it if we see a pet that is not warm and safe.
Yes, that's very important to know, is how to report it. And so what you want to do is, in each county, you want to report animal cruelty to your county humane society. Dog shelters and humane societies are different. They have different jobs. Your animal shelter, like the Franklin County Animal Shelter, they deal with stray dogs and loose dogs. That's the job of the dog warden. When it comes to an animal that's freezing, that doesn't have food, water, or appropriate shelter, you want to call the Humane Society. So here in Columbus, it'd be Capital Area Humane Society. Wherever county you live in, it's the Humane Society that employs the humane agent for the cruelty investigations. So it's very important because it can be very time sensitive. You want to make sure you call the right department for the right situation.
Completely agree. Well, thank you for taking the time to give us tips about how to keep our pets safe and warm, and also updating us on the 4 bills, again, that